Hi, and welcome to the second video for our how-to guide for the Matrikon Data Broker MQTT Publisher. As we already explained in the first video on how to install and connect the MQTT Publisher to the Data Broker, I would like to demonstrate you in this video on how to actually configure the MQTT Publisher to publish data to your MQTT broker or your cloud application, wherever the data is supposed to go to. Okay, let me switch again to my demo environment. And here, this is exactly where we left off in the previous video, where we installed the MQTT publisher and connected it to MDB. So now I would like to proceed with the configuration of the MQTT publisher here. And to do so, we require the Matrikon OPC UA Explorer in order to connect it to the publisher and do the config. Okay, so let me create a new connection. And as I already mentioned in the previous video, the MQTT publisher is running here on the same machine and contains an OPC UA server, which we can use to configure it. Therefore, we have to fill in those connection details here. And the publisher is listening on the port 60,000. It was found. We simply select security mode and have also, again, to fill in the publisher user credentials. By default, those are operator, and the password is also operator. And on connect, we will again see this security issue because the publisher does not know this Explorer here and therefore doesn't trust its certificate because this is the very first initial connect, and therefore we have to go and trust this manual add the certificate manually by transferring it from rejected into the trusted folder. So here I go to the program data, Matrikon MQTT Publisher this time, and here is the PKI folder. And yeah, we need to transfer from rejected to trusted. So let's look up the rejected certificate here. There it is. And move it to the trusted certificate storage. Here it is. And now we should be able to connect successfully. Here we go. Okay, so now we can start with the configuration of the MQTT publisher. And for this config, we have this icon here, this configuration menu for the publisher. This is where we can go over the single parts of the config and make the setup for the single parts of it, which are represented here by the different tabs. So the first tab is the OPC UA Client connection. This means that the MQTT publisher can connect to an OPC UA server and pull data from it in order to publish it later on. So in our case, the source UA server will be Data Broker. And therefore, I will fill in here the connection details to our Data Broker. The Data Broker is running on the same machine and is listening on port 55,000. There it is. The user credentials are correct so far, so we can simply click Save here. Okay, now we have the UA Client connection of the publisher configured and can move to the next tab. Here, the writer groups, or under the writer groups tab, we can import, export the so-called writer groups or writer group files. And you see there's a default file, and I will download it and go through this file with you, just to explain you the settings and what else needs to be known about this. So I simply download it, or put it on my desktop. Writer groups JSON. There it is. So let me open it up. And just give me a second. I will adjust the file a little bit for better visibility. Okay, now I can explain the file a little bit. So you can see here in this writer groups file, we have multiple writer groups. And for this demo, I will simply use the writer group 01 as an example. You can see here, so this group or writer group has a name, it is enabled, it has an ID, and here we have a very important option, publishing interval. This option defines how often the publisher will be publishing all the data that is going through this writer group 01. So by default is set to 30 seconds. I will simply reduce it to 3 seconds or 3000 milliseconds, so that we will get the data a little bit faster and don't need to wait too long. Then you can see here under the writer group, there's also a dataset writer assigned to that writer group 01. And to this dataset writer, there's also a dataset assigned. In this case, this is the dataset 01. Just keep in mind that dataset 01 is the name that we will require later on. Beside this, also the dataset writer has a name, a status, an ID, the referenced dataset, and it also has another important option. This is the publishing type, and this option defines how exactly this publishing is being carried out. So in this subscription mode, this means that the publisher will be only publishing those values which have changed in the meantime. So it's on data change, if you so will. But we can also change this mode into scan, and the scan mode means it will be publishing the values regardless if they have changed or not. So it will be always publishing the value, even if it's the same value still in place. Yeah, so this is pretty much it that you need to know about the writer groups. So just keep in mind, we adjusted the writer group 01 a little bit, and the group 01 is pointing to the dataset 01. Okay, let me save and close that file, and now we can go back to the publisher config and now import the adjusted file. Upload, apply. Okay, now we imported the new writer group file with the new adjusted settings. And now we can move on to the next step, which is the dataset. And the datasets are also managed within JSON files. You see here, there's also a default dataset JSON file. And those datasets are actually the tag lists that contain the tags that we want to be published. Unfortunately, those files are very, or the structure of the file is very complex, and depending on the amount of tags on your list, you can imagine you can have a long list of tags. It is not very handy to create those files manually. Therefore, we came up with the so-called Matrikon MQTT Publisher utility, and this utility simply creates those dataset files for us. Therefore, I would like to give you a quick introduction on how to use that publisher utility. So let me start it. So this is the GUI, and you see here it requires a CSV file as an input, and this CSV file contains the list of tags that we want to be added to our data set. And in order to get this CSV file, we require the UA Explorer again, because with this Explorer, we can use this feature here, the export feature, to export subscribed tags, which then can be used within this utility. So let me connect the Explorer to the Data Broker, because I would like to use some Data Broker tags that we will be publishing. So I'm connected to the Data Broker and go and browse for the text that I want to be added to my list. Okay, let me take those tags. You see, now I subscribe to them. Now I can go and export them to a CSV file, and I will simply call them tags and save them on my desktop. Here we are. So now, having that text list, which simply contains a list of these tags here, we can go back to the utility and now use that file for the utility. Here we are. So the next required field is this MQTT Publisher configuration, and here we simply reference the folder where the MQTT Publisher configs are located. Again, I go to C, Program Data, Matrikon MQTT Publisher, and here you see this config folder. You simply need to reference that folder, and then it automatically finds the required JSON file in that folder. Here we can select the UA client connection. For example, if your publisher is connecting to multiple UA servers, then you can select which connection you want to be used. But we have only one here, so there's not a lot of a choice. And we can go to the next option, and this is the dataset index. You remember we in our writer group file we mentioned dataset 01, and therefore we need to make sure that we are referencing the correct data index. Yeah, in our case it was 01, so we can leave it as it is. And this is just a random name that will be given to the new generated output file. Okay. Now we can go and create the file. Okay, so there it is. So this is the file, and this file now contains all these tags. Yeah, let me get back to the UA Explorer with our config of the MQTT Publisher. So I can now import this new dataset file that we generated with this utility, upload, apply, and we are done. So now we applied a dataset file which contains the dataset 01 with a couple of tags. So the next step is for event subscriptions, and this is pretty much the same thing as the datasets, just for events. So you can also create a JSON file with a list of events that should be then picked up and published by the MQTT Publisher. But yeah, in this demo, I'm just showing the data sets, but the events works the same way, so don't bother about this. And let's move to the next very important configuration option, This is the MQTT client connections. And here we can set up or configure the MQTT Publisher to communicate to a specific MQTT broker or to a specific cloud or specific MQTT subscriber. And you see there's a couple of default examples. I will simply create a completely new one. We are using here the MQTT Broker because I'm going to publish the data here in this example to Mosquito MQTT Broker. So this is a regular MQTT broker, and therefore I require this option here. If you're publishing to Azure or AWS IoT Core, then of course you have to pick those connection types that you need. For this demo, we will go first the regular MQTT broker. Okay, just give the connection a name. It will be my demo. I will enable it directly. So now we have to provide the address of our MQTT broker. And as I already said, we are using here Mosquito MQTT broker, which is running on the same machine. So I will simply fill in the local IP address. I fill in a name for the topic that will be published. So the data will be published under this topic. And the client ID will be MDB MQTT Publisher. Okay, so this is pretty much it on this side. And on the other side, you see here we have to reference a writer group. So I will go with our writer group 01. This is the one that we adjusted, and this is also the one that is referencing our dataset 01 list. Okay, I've added it to this to the writer groups, and now we can go and click save. Also click apply, and now we're actually done. You see this is running. I will just cover the last option tab here, or config tab, which is options, and here you can adjust some of the general options like logging level or log file size and this type of things. Maybe let me emphasize this setting, this max store forward memory footprint in megabyte, because this is an important one. And here we can specify some memory or amount of memory that will be used for buffering the publishing messages. For example, in case if the publisher will be disconnected from the broker because of internet outage or internet connection, or maybe the MQTT broker will be not available, the MQTT publisher will be buffering all these all his publish notifications, and here we can specify the amount of memory that we want to give for this buffer. And here we need to be carefully with this, because this buffer is based on the RAM memory. So don't give too much RAM memory away for this buffer, and make sure that you have enough memory for the operating system and other applications on your machine. Okay, so yeah, this is it. I will simply close everything and restart just to make sure that all the changes will be loaded and initiated. So restarting the data broker and starting up the publisher. Okay, as a last step, I would like to double check if the data is in fact being published, and to do so, I will be using this MQTT subscriber. This is just a freeware tool, and yeah, you see this pre-configured to connect to local mosquito because it's the only one that it found. I'm connecting to that mosquito MQTT Broker, and can here fill in a topic to which we would like to subscribe. And as you remember, I named the topic topic 1. And now we can subscribe to this topic. And you see here it immediately started to receive updates or publishing messages. Let me change the view. We'll have a pretty JSON format here. And now you see that we are getting every 3 seconds updates from the Matrikon Data Broker MQTT Publisher. And this one provides simply the data or the values of those texts that we configured through our text list here. Yeah, this is pretty much it. I hope I could give you a rough understanding on how to configure this whole thing, and hope that you find it helpful. So thank you very much, and goodbye.